So welcome everyone to this short series about unlocking local action, where we're going to explore different ways for getting the community more involved in climate action. My name is Rick Casali, and I'm a trustee of Carbon Copy. Before I introduce my guest, let me just give you a couple of housekeeping details. Our chat's going to be recorded, and you'll be able to watch it on Catch Up if you go to carboncopy.eco, that's .eco. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat and a Q&A. Feel free to use those if you want to ask any questions. I'll do my best to pass them on. If I run out of time, then we will try and sort that out after the session. I am delighted to introduce you to Stine Wilhelmsen from Hubbub. Let me introduce you, Stine, before I pass the virtual stage on to you. Stine is a senior creative partner at an environmental agency called Hubbub. She has worked on a number of campaigns across a really wide spectrum. I was looking earlier, and it's everything from like water savings, sustainable diets, food waste, circular economy. I mean, it runs the whole gamut. And in many ways, that's very interesting and very relevant, because what she's going to talk to us about now is a campaign that probably brings various of those projects and elements all together under one roof. So the campaign that Stine is going to talk to us about is the Manchester Community Project. It's in its early stages, but nonetheless, very, very interesting in terms of the thinking that's going into it and the ambition and what it should hopefully look like in a few months' time. So Stine, I'll pass it over to you. Do you want to share something with us on your screen?
Yes, thanks,
Okay.
Rick.
You're welcome.
Try to share my screen, which always is the most nerve-wracking moment.
Yep, there we go.
Fantastic. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Rick, for welcoming me to come along to this webinar series. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll start with giving a brief introduction to Hubbub and the work that we do, and then I'll give an outline of the campaign that we're developing in Manchester. There we go. So yeah, like Rick mentioned, Hubbub, we're an environmental charity. We were set up in 2014 with the purpose of inspiring ways of living that are good for the environment. So we design behavior change campaigns that make environmental actions desirable, accessible, and enjoyable. We really want to connect with the mainstream audience and talk about environmental issues in a way that's relevant to them by focusing on things that they are passionate about and engage with on a day-to-day basis. So that being the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the homes we live in, and the neighborhoods that we are part of. So like Rick mentioned, I've been working on a whole range of campaigns over the last 5 years, and that's very evidence of Hubbub's kind of big reach. So yeah, like you mentioned, we've been running campaigns on food waste, sustainable fashion, recycling, water saving, and a lot more besides. But across all of our campaigns, we have a common approach, and I'll touch briefly on that now. So first of all, we're really curious. So we base all of our campaigns on insight. We listen, observe, and ask questions to really understand the issues that we're trying to tackle and the audience that we're trying to work with. So really kind of gain insight into the barriers and opportunities to support them to make positive lifestyle changes. So the method for gaining that insight really varies across the campaigns, but it often includes a combination of focus groups, surveys, working really closely with a number of households over quite a long period of time, as well as kind of observational research. So for example, for our recycling campaigns, we spend lots of time out on the street watching how people use bins, which is definitely the most luxurious piece of work I have. Secondly, collaboration is really key to our approach. So over the last 7 years, we worked with more than 700 partners, ranging from community groups to academics, to the corporate sector, to local authorities. And we get really excited when we're able to bring kind of unexpected partners around the table to tackle a common challenge. And that's, yeah, very much kind of the purpose with the Manchester campaign as well, which I'll come back to in a bit. Thirdly, we're a creative bunch, so we have a fantastic team of designers that really challenge us to use design thinking when we develop our campaigns. And we really focus on using positive communications and kind of bright, aspirational designs in our campaigns. So less doom and gloom and more fun, playfulness, and highlighting the benefits, both for the planet and for our communities, but also for individuals. And importantly, we make sure that proven behavior change techniques are at the basis of all of our campaigns. And finally, we're a relatively small environmental charity, and we know we can't tackle the climate crisis on our own. So we made the decision quite early on to pilot things on a small scale, to really experiment and adapt and make sure that we measure things throughout so that we know what works and what doesn't. And importantly, we're really open about that. So we share learnings, both the good things and the bad things, and really hope that people can take what does work and replicate it and scale it either with us, or we kind of open source and give away solutions for others to run with. So yeah, I was really excited to be invited to speak at this webinar series, because in a way the question that the series asks is very aligned with the kind of starting point for the campaign that we're developing in Manchester. This question: how can we unlock the potential of residents and communities to respond to the climate emergency? So as everyone tuning in today will be well aware, we've seen hundreds of local councils declare climate emergency in recent years, and many have set really ambitious targets. But in conversations that we were having with local authorities, we were hearing that they were really struggling to articulate what this means for their residents and for their communities. And we also know from our own research and that of others that there's a huge disconnect between councils making these declarations and people's everyday lives. And for most people, climate change is a really abstract and often overwhelming concept, and it's hard to know what steps to take to be part of the solution, and people are concerned that change will be difficult. So that's very much the starting point. And about a year ago now, actually, we started having conversations with Manchester City Council and the Manchester Climate Change Agency, which are responsible for championing climate action in the city, about doing something together to try to answer this question. And we're really excited to have secured funding from a few charitable funders, a group of corporate partners, as well as the National Lottery, to deliver a 15-month program of activity in the city. So that will include a positive citywide communications campaign and a series of local projects in a few partner communities. So the program will bring together a huge range of local and national partners to support the delivery, and very much to help and to reach and engage a wider audience. So of course that will include the City Council, and importantly the neighbourhood teams, which have a really unique expertise and connection into communities, as well as the Climate Change Agency, but also the Manchester Climate Change Partnership, which represents the city's culture sector, sports club, housing providers, faith groups and more, which is amazing and will allow us to have a really wide reach in the city. Other key partners include the Tyndall Centre for Climate Research, which will bring the kind of scientific rigour and the number crunching to the campaign, as well as Amity, which is a fantastic Manchester-based organisation that specialises in community engagement and empowerment. So we'll be working really closely with them. And then we're also looking to connect with as many community groups and initiatives and projects as possible. We've spent the last 6 to 8 months having conversations, so basically listening and trying to understand where we can add value, and really getting a sense of what's going on already and where the connections are, and where we can kind of come in and support together with other delivery partners. And then really importantly, we're looking to place residents very much at the forefront of the design of the campaign, and also in the decision making. So one of the mechanisms that will allow us to do that is that we're establishing a residents and community board, which will have the kind of final say on what the programme should look like. So I'll just touch briefly on the kind of two main components. So firstly, the citywide communications campaign. So the aim with this is very much to give residents kind of practical tips, hacks and advice that resonate for them and are relevant for their lifestyle. And we'll use a combination of social media and kind of digital channels, as well as offline communications, to make sure we're reaching people who might not be on social media or be kind of digitally savvy. So that will include kind of street advertisements, potentially a kind of very exciting installation, but also really bespoke kind of communications packs, for example, that will be distributed through the housing providers partnership. So a real range of communications tailored for different audiences. We'll also be creating a community engagement portal, which will be a space where residents can share their views about what we're doing, but also what other things they'd like to see. And will also be an easy place for people to check in about what's going on in their area. And we hope that will kind of foster opportunities for volunteering or just kind of getting stuck in with things that are happening in your community. And then as part of the campaign, we'll be creating this shared brand for the city. And there's two aims of that. One is to kind of tie all the different activities together. So both things that we'll be doing, but also all the amazing things that are already happening in Manchester. And as part of that, we'll be creating some template resources for community groups. So we know from past experience that can be a big barrier for groups if they don't have kind of access to design capacity. So we'll be open sourcing lots of template resources to hopefully help with that. And then, yeah, finally, just to say that as well as kind of sharing tips and advice and content, a really key part of the campaign will be amplifying what's happening on the ground and yeah, creating that sense of pride and kind of connection, and yeah, making it easy for people to get involved. And then, yeah, alongside the communication campaign, we'll be trialing lots of different community projects. So this will be a combination of things that we've tried elsewhere and we know have a really positive impact, both environmentally and socially. So, for example, we'll be setting up a number of community fridges, which are shared spaces where residents and businesses can share food that would otherwise have gone to waste. But we'll also be trying lots of new stuff and working really closely with residents to identify what they want to see and what the local needs and priorities are. Importantly, we want to not obviously create projects that have an environmental and impact on carbon reduction, but that also help residents save money, increase access to green space, learn new skills, and connect with their neighbours. So very much a focus on this kind of co-benefits. And yeah, and then I mentioned at the beginning that, yeah, kind of core to our model is trialing things on a small scale. So we've identified a few partner communities that we'll be starting in, but the aim is very much to kind of share learnings and create tried and tested solutions that can be replicated across Manchester, but also hopefully more widely across the UK. And then, yeah, just a quick, I guess, point on how the communications and the projects kind of link together and work in tandem. So I guess how we see it, the communications campaign is very much about kind of celebrating what's happening on the ground and engaging a wider audience, people that might not necessarily either have the time or the resource to get involved and kind of get stuck in. But yeah, so kind of amplifying that. And then the community projects are very much kind of providing the real life case studies and examples that you know has that kind of inspiration element that we want to share more widely in the comms campaign. So yeah, I think I'll actually leave it there, but that's my email. So obviously Rick has lots of questions, but yeah, very happy for anyone to get in touch. If you're working in Manchester or resident or just interested, then please do drop an email. And you can also visit our website. We have a survey up at the moment until the end of the month for residents to kind of share their thoughts, and lots of other opportunities to get involved. So I hope I'll be hearing from you.
That is fantastic. I do have a lot of questions, so I will just start to ask some of the questions that I have, and other people can obviously chip in as well. One of the things that struck me, and there's lots of different things in your presentation that's really interesting, is this idea of a shared brand, of having a communication campaign that obviously covers both residents and individuals and also community groups. And it's particularly interesting for me because at Carbon Copy, we're really focused on community groups and collective action, but it always starts with us as individuals. And then when individuals want to take the next step collectively, then they're doing so in their local community groups. And so how challenging or easy is it to bridge the communication an involvement of people taking individual actions and community groups taking more collective action?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I guess what we're trying to do here is a bit of both. So I think the communications campaign will focus primarily on kind of actions that we can all take at home. So really kind of, I guess easy wins, so kind of first steps for people, but then also directing people to local projects or initiatives if they want to get kind of more involved. And then often I think we work with, I think the community fridges is a good example where obviously it's an initiative that reduces food waste on the kind of community level, but when people go there, they can also very often kind of pick up recipes or sometimes attend kind of cooking skills. So I think it's really nice if you, I guess, create that kind of connection between what we do as a community and also what we do at home. I think with this campaign, we're trying to do a bit of both. So kind of realizing that for some people, actually taking action at home is the extent to which they can get involved, and that's brilliant. But then we also really want to do stuff at community level because some of the challenges that we're facing, requires that kind of action. And also then you kind of get the kind of social norming and connections that can foster further action as well, which is really nice. So yeah, we're trying to do a bit of both here, which in some ways is a kind of new territory for us. Like many of our campaigns has been very focused on one topic, and I think that's what's really exciting with this program for us at Hubbub, is that actually we're trying to connect different topics and connect between kind of taking action at home as an individual to taking action as part of a wider community, and that's really exciting for us. And I think I'm glad we have this brilliant coalition of partners that can help us kind of take that step and create those connections.
And that's a nice segue in terms of touching upon the partners that are involved. I've got a question here about when you don't have an organization like Hubbub, how can you potentially do something like this? And you did mention that it is your vision to create maybe some turnkey communication tools, for instance, so that there may be some ways that other people can just take what you're developing and run with it. But I'd also like to ask the question, if there isn't a Hubbub on the ground to help, do you see certain potential partners within your coalition as being natural other groups elsewhere that could take the lead in doing something similar?
It's a good question. Yeah. I guess on the first point first, yeah. So I think very much the aim for us is to create, we call it kind of a toolkit of tried and tested solutions, which obviously is a bit jargony, but yeah, to basically create some models that can be shared, both in terms of what messaging resonates and some kind of guidance in terms of communications, but also actual projects. So obviously I've referred a couple of times to the community fridges, but that's a brilliant model that basically grew out of us testing one in a town called Swadlincote in 2016, and now there's more than 100 run by amazing groups, and our role is very much kind of sharing the learning that we've had and creating this model to make it really easy to set it up, or as easy as possible. It's still a challenge. And I guess, the aim with the Manchester campaign is to create more models like the community fridge model. So I guess with partners such as Carbon Copy to really share that really broadly. So I think there'll be lots hopefully learnings to share. In terms of kind of key partners, I guess the main thing that we really realized by doing this initial insight work is that there's so much going on. Like obviously Manchester is a super, a thriving and kind of trailblazing place, but there's so much going on, and I think what we're coming in to do is very much, I guess, trying to connect the dots and getting people that might not be talking to each other to talk to each other, and creating that shared brand, and I guess adding potentially an element of reaching out to kind of harder to reach audiences, or creating that kind of really accessible content, which hopefully we'll be able to provide to people outside of Manchester as well after this campaign. So I guess my advice is just, I'm sure there's lots going on where you are as well, and try to just connect with them. Obviously the kind of council neighborhood teams is a good place to start, because they often have a really good sense of what's going on, but also just kind of having conversations, because I think that's the amazing thing, and I guess Carbon Copy is evidence of that. There's so many amazing initiatives out there. I think it's very much kind of just finding ways to connect with each other and kind of get out of the bubble, and also sorry, I'm kind of a lot to answer on this question, but I think also the really interesting thing is that, I guess, in our kind of stakeholder engagement, we haven't just spoken to the kind of green groups or environmental groups, because I think often, there's amazing youth projects and youth groups and, people doing, Friends of Parks, so people not really, I guess, in the kind of environmental space. But if we're able to kind of reach beyond that, then actually there's lots of activity going on that are already kind of connected to residents, have lots of, volunteer networks and lots of passion and excitement. And actually, if we can connect those groups as well, then really exciting things can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you as an agency bring is the power of this creative design to the common thread. And I have a question here about when you are designing these behavioral change interventions, are you doing it drawing on specific theories, or do you find that trial and error is the best way to find out what works?
Bit of both. So we base it at proven behavior change techniques. So a lot of nudge and kind of play theory, as well as social norming. So that's kind of, I guess, the basis. But yeah, definitely trial and testing. So obviously we've now been going for 7 years, so we've done some of that testing already, even though we always want to test new in a new place as well, because circumstances will be different. But I think that's the beauty of a model like Hubbub, where you test something on a relatively small scale so that you fail cheap,
Yes.
learn quickly, and then you scale up from there. So yeah, I think a bit of both. The proven behavior change theories is the foundation, but then there's sometimes what's in the theory books doesn't translate to real life. So yeah, definitely.
Sometimes, I would say a lot of the time, doesn't stop you from having a plan, but then you need to recognize that you need to change the plan almost as soon as you've written it.
Yeah.
Talking about scale, I have another question in terms of thinking about how your project can scale up potentially within Manchester. So just to clarify, you are focusing on a couple of areas within the city initially, is that right? And then do you also have a vision for how it will roll out within Manchester itself, as well as beyond to other cities?
Yeah. So yes, so we've identified a few places that will focus the on-the-ground activities. And the aim is to scale up. I guess we're working with the Manchester City Council, but obviously there's a kind of obvious route potentially to Greater Manchester. So yeah, we'll kind of it's definitely on our mind, and I think on the council's, that's what the council would like to see as well. But we'll need to see how it goes first.
Yeah. Here's a very short question, which probably has a very long answer. The short question is, how do you measure success? And I'd like to add to that and say, given that you've got different stakeholders that are coming at it from different angles, they probably have different versions of what success looks like. So I'm curious as to if there is just one single answer, and what would the answer be from your perspective?
Yeah, measurement, something we're tackling at the moment. So if there's anyone tuning in who happens to be an independent evaluation provider, then do please email that I shared a bit earlier. But no, I think success for us is I guess on the very kind of top line, it's residents in Manchester feeling like they know what they can do to be part of tackling the climate emergency. And I think there's kind of two sides to that. One is what I can do as an individual and as part of my community, but also an awareness of what the council is doing, and I guess which channels I can use to talk about the kind of limitations of individual and community action as well, because that's an important side of this. In terms of how we'll be measuring it, I think there will be a host of different factors. So obviously on the communication side of it, it's reach, engagement, who we're reaching, also lots of testing. So I think as well as kind of the impact of this campaign, a huge part of it is actually understanding what works. So as well as the reach, we want to know why didn't that work and why didn't that work. So we'll do A/B testing, focus groups, surveys to really understand what's most effective. And then on the individual projects, it will depend a bit what they are, but to use the community fridge as an example, the measures of success there will be obviously amount of food reduced or not going to waste, but also the number of people visiting, number of unique visitors. Who are we reaching? Are they the audiences that we aim to reach? But also the kind of unexpected outcomes. You know, is anyone are they now running cooking workshops? Are they now sharing other things? So yeah, the kind of it'll be a complicated measurement evaluation, but I'm quite excited about it actually. So yeah, again, if anyone wants to discuss that, then do please get in touch, because I can get quite nerdy about that.
Good. In terms of reaching different audiences, can you say a bit more about engaging with resident groups or faith communities that don't necessarily have a green agenda? And that could be from some of your previous projects, because I know this is a project that's in the making, but some of those groups that are hard to reach or really disconnect from anything that's environmental for whatever reason. Have you had success in engaging those kinds of groups? And can you say a bit more?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that listening piece actually. So I mentioned at the beginning that where we really start is listening, asking questions, and I guess getting a sense of where people are at and the kind of the co-benefits, or that's quite a jargony word, but like the personal motivation. So if it isn't tackling the climate crisis for whatever reason, then, you know, what are some of the other motivations? So is it saving money? Is it, you know, having a safer neighborhood, or just, you know, having more time? So I think, yeah, very much that kind of listening piece, and then trying to find the frame that resonates. And yes, we've done a few campaigns that have achieved that. So for example, we ran a campaign a few years ago on fuel poverty, and the really kind of takeaway learning there was that people don't identify as being in fuel poverty. You know, you don't Google fuel poverty advice from councils. It was about talking about, you know, warmer homes, or, you know, saving money, and just really, I guess, using that language that resonates. And I think importantly also with the channels. So you know, thinking about who you're trying to engage and where do they go to, who are the trusted messengers, where did they go for information and advice. It might not always be the council, it might not be social media, it might be, like you say, kind of faith leaders, or kind of people in their community. So yeah, I think it comes back, like, it's hard to say something specific about this campaign, but yeah, in general, I think it's about that listening piece, and kind of, you know, leaving hopefully your preconceptions at the door. And also I think importantly to, I guess, to note that I guess kind of capacity and resource for change comes in very many shapes and forms. So it's also about learning. It's not like we have something to teach other groups who aren't part of the environmental movement. It could be the other way around as well. So I think it's important, that listening piece, to be kind of two-way. That's where we're going to start. Yeah.
And also you mentioned in your presentation about making the message less abstract. And if you can make the connections, I mean, co-benefits, like you say, it's a bit jargony, but it's really talking about what it means for me in my everyday life. And I think that's obviously a strong connection if you can listen and find out what that is.
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of people want to do something, and are really, you know, even a lot of us that are really into, you know, the kind of the climate movement, I guess it can be really hard to know where to start, right? So it is taking it down to that level, and giving people kind of practical tips, and making it a bit easier for people to take action, because a lot of people want to do that, which is amazing. That's where we'll hopefully come in and meet our demands.
So one more question, and you don't necessarily need to give me a figure for this. So let me tell you what the question is and then rephrase it a little bit. The question is around, what would you say is the cost per resident to deliver the program? And I would add on to that as a bit of a deflector, which is, it seems as if your model is one whereby you do something in a certain place with a view to it rolling out, and people taking toolkits or whatever and doing something similar where they live. And it's partly that is that some of your thinking that goes into what is the return on the program, is also eventually how you hope it to scale, and looking at it that way, or do you look at it very much on the specific project basis?
I think the latter. So I guess it's different kind of pots of money coming in here. So obviously we're coming at it very much from a lens of creating something that can be replicated, and understandably kind of the council or funders in Manchester would be more interested in actual impact in Manchester. So yeah, like, I guess it goes back to that expectation might be slightly different, but not kind of, you know, we're all pulling in the same direction. Yeah, I don't have a number on it's an interesting question. I'll do the calculations on that eventually when we know how many people we've managed to reach and engage. But yeah, I think it's almost impossible to say. I guess you can take it back to again with the community fridge model, the cost of setting that first one up. You then divide that by 110. Obviously, there's been some funding along the way, but yeah, hopefully the kind of initial investment really pays off in the ripple effect. But yeah, it would be a fun exercise to do that. That is not a requirement that we've had from many of our funders, I must say.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Time has flown by. We're out of time now. Some great questions. Really engaging topic. From my point of view as Carbon Copy, we just love talking about things that can be copied. So to hear you talking about, this is the Hubbub model and this is the vision for how you will take it around Manchester and wider, is fantastic. And let's keep in touch, because really keen to hear how the project rolls out and some of the successes that we've just been talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me and thanks for all the questions. Amazing.
Thank you.